Hello. This week we're learning Parsha Bo. Come. What it means? Come to Pharaoh, basically. That's the idea. And it starts from that word, the whole Parsha. First, the content. The last 3 of the 10 plagues are coming over to Egypt. A swarm of locusts devours all of the crops and greenery, whatever is left after the fiery and cold hail of the previous plague. A thick total darkness envelopes the land, and that's the 9th plague. And then the 10th plague. All the firstborn of Egypt are killed at the stroke of midnight on the 15th of the month of Nisan. What is locusts, we understand. It was locusts, a swarm of locusts, which we experience sometimes the same events, in much smaller scale in Africa, for instance, and it's a known event. But what is darkness? Torah explains that no Egyptian man could see his brother. But the darkness did not obstruct the Israelites' vision. They had light in their houses and they could see. During these first 3 days, the Israelites who did not want to leave Egypt, and there were quite a lot, 4/5 of the population, of Jewish population, they all died. Hashem knew who wants to leave Egypt and who doesn't, and that was the consequence. So this happened specifically when the Egyptians could not see. So it is so that they should not be able to think that these Jews were dying of the same cause and for the same reasons that the Egyptians died during the plagues. But it's a significant number of people. God commands the first mitzvah to be given to the people of Israel to establish a calendar based on the monthly rebirth of the moon. So it's a lunar calendar. The Israelites are also instructed to bring a Passover offering to God. A lamb or a kid, which is a little goat, is to be slaughtered and its blood sprinkled on the doorposts and lintel of every Israelite home, so that God should pass over these homes when he comes to kill the Egyptian firstborn with it on the 10th plague. You guessed it correctly. This is the night of Passover. The roasted meat of the offering is to be eaten that night together with the matzah, unleavened bread, and bitter herbs. All right, now then we look at the death of the firstborn. The death of the firstborn finally breaks Pharaoh's resistance, and he literally drives the children of Israel from his land. So hastily do they depart that there is no time for their dough to rise, and the only provision they take along with them were unleavened dough. Before they go, they ask the Egyptian neighbors for gold, silver, and garments, fulfilling the promise made to Abraham that his descendants would leave Egypt with great wealth. Some sages say they basically emptied Egypt. The children of Israel are commanded by Hashem to observe the anniversary of Exodus each year by removing all leaven from their possessions for 7 days, which is what we're doing up to this day, eating matzah for 7 days and telling the story of their redemption to their children, which is what we do on the first Seder. Hence, we will celebrate Passover, the first Seder, on the 27th of March 2021, this year. Why is that commandment considered to be a foundation of Jewish nation? Because here lies the very definition of our Jewish identity, as well as the establishment of the most important aspect of our existence, education of our children. In what? In who they are, what is the purpose of their life, and how to build a good life for themselves. Not only for themselves, for their families and their community and maybe their country. They are also commanded to wear tefillin on the arm and the head as a reminder of the Exodus and their resultant commitment to God. That will become a mitzvah only after they come to the land of Israel. And that's the content of this parsha. Now, let's look a little bit deeper. First, I want to state some facts related to this parsha. Do you realize that during the plague of darkness, the 9th plague, when I mentioned that some Jews died, the ones which didn't want to leave Egypt, and 4/5 of the Jewish population died. That means, my friends, that we are the descendants of mere 20% of Jewish population which used to live in Egypt. In other words, the best of the best who did not fall into the pit of Egyptian culture. Still, just make few calculations. There were 600,000 men conscription age between 20 and 60. And altogether there were 3.2 million Jews, including those men, so women, children, elderly, etc. And they were standing at the foot of Mount Sinai few days later. That means, if you make this simple calculation, that approximately 16 million Jews lived in Egypt prior to the plague of darkness. No wonder that the Pharaoh was afraid of them. You can imagine, out of the 16 million, only 3.2 million survived the plague of darkness and left Egypt. So it's some food for thought. Let's look a little bit deeper in the Torah, into the mysterious spiritual part of it. As I was saying in the Parsha Vayera last week, the purpose of the plagues was not only to take the Jews out of Egypt, of Egyptian slavery, but as well to annihilate the Egyptian civilization culture of klipa, impurity, negativity, the evil aspect of humanity. The great Ari, Rabbi Isaac Luria, he was born in 1534 in Jerusalem and died at the very young age of 38 in Safed in Israel. He was saying that in order to do the total destruction of Egyptian cultural foundation, two things must take place. One, the first one, is the requirement to elevate the fallen sparks of holiness that were scattered all over the earth and were mixed with the evil due to the sin of Adam. And this was one of the reasons why God allowed Egyptian slavery to take place in the first place. It was a necessary step. More than that, we know about it because God predicted all of this to Abraham in Bereshit. Look what he was saying. You shall surely know that your seed will be strangers in a land that is not theirs, and they will enslave them and oppress them for 400 years, and also the nation that they will serve will I judge. And afterwards they will go forth with great possessions. And he repeats this again here in this parsha, in Bo, when he is saying to Moshe. He instructs Moshe, says to him to ask Israelites to borrow. Well, some sages say the Israelites were saying to Egyptians, please give me, and to take from them, from the Egyptians, their jewelry, silver, gold, all sorts of vessels, etc. The Israelites complied, and the Egyptians were ready to give them all their valuables. That was the influence from above, from spiritual world. The reason why taking all of these gold and silver vessels and jewelry is so important is that those items, those physical items, contained these fallen sparks of holiness and had to be taken out of Egypt and elevated to Kedusha, taken to the land of Israel. As soon as they start serving the Jewish people, the process of elevation begins. The Kabbalists say the divine presence accompanies the Jewish people in their exile, whether it was then or now in Edom, which the exile still continues, it's the same, in order to reconstruct herself out of the fallen sparks of her shattered self. So it's a basic, necessary process of redemption. The second point great Ari was making, he said that a total destruction of the security foundations of Egypt in the strongest part of it, the Pharaoh, must take place. After Moshe warned Pharaoh about the forthcoming 10th plague, which is killing of the firstborn, and being told by Pharaoh in response about if you don't do what I say, Pharaoh said to them, do not appear in front of me or you will be killed. So the following took place as a consequence of all these conversations. A few hours before the midnight of the 14th to the 15th of Nisan, Pharaoh was running by himself all over the streets without any security, and he was going door to door of Jewish homes looking for Moshe and Aaron, asking for them. He was totally distressed, he was mentally and psychologically destroyed and totally petrified that he himself will be killed, as he was one of the firstborn. And when finally Moshe and Aaron came out to him, he immediately ordered the Jews to leave. Immediately. Satisfying all conditions which they demanded, which were requested by Moshe and Aaron. So the pride of the stubborn king was broken. This was a total destruction of the security foundations of Egypt. Meanwhile, the Hebrews have been preparing for their hasty departure. They've been now told to leave Egypt. With beating hearts, they have assembled in groups to eat the Paschal lamb, which God has ordered them, before the midnight, as they have been commanded. The women had taken from the ovens their unleavened cakes, which were eaten with the meat of the roasted lamb. The preparations were at last concluded, and all was ready for the departure. All they were waiting for is the word of their leaders, And as that came, the whole nation of the Hebrews poured forward into the cool of the still eastern morning, very early morning. But not even amidst their trepidation and danger did they forget the pledge which was given by their ancestors to Joseph. And they carried his remains with them to put him to the rest later in the promised land. Can you imagine? 3.2 million people, plus all of their possessions and all of their cattle, including Egyptian wealth, were marching out of Egypt. And what is interesting, even the dogs did not bark. Shabbat Shalom.
למען החי ורעי, למען החי ורעי, אדם בנה, אדם בנה, שלום רב, למען החי למען החי ורעי, אדם בנה, אדם בנה,